mga kabalayan, I am Sheila Meagbuya at ngayon po ay araw ng Martes, April 5, 2022.
Good morning mga kabalayan! I am Camille Villaruel and we are your studio hosts for today.
Hatid po namin sa inyo ang mga kaalaman tungkol sa typology of learners with special needs.
Welcome to the #1 TV entertainment in the country. This is Typology TV.
Have you ever wondered why there are individuals or children who have unique abilities and physical features? It is because they are called the learners with special needs.
At dahil special kayo, nag-invite kami ng mga guests regarding our topic. Let's call our guest for today. Please welcome Dr. Jovelyn Custodio and Teacher Jopay de Guzman.
Good morning everyone. So I am Dr. Jovelyn. I want to share my knowledge about the learners with intellectual disability and learners with learning disability. So first, the learners with intellectual disability. So it is a use when a person has certain limitations in mental functioning and in skills such as communicating, taking care of him or herself, and social skills. So these limitations will cause a child to learn and develop more slowly than a typical child. So children with intellectual disabilities may take longer to learn to speak, walk, and take care of their personal needs such as dressing or eating. So they are likely have to trouble learning in school. So we have two intellectual disabilities. So number one is cerebral palsy. It is a brain disorder that affects person's ability to move and maintain balance and posture. So number two, trisomy 21. So this is also known as Down syndrome. It has a genetic condition caused by extra chromosomes. So the normal chromosomes of a child or as a human have 46. So the next one is the learners with learning disability. So it is a neurological conditions which affects the brain's ability to send, receive, and process information. So having a learning disorder means that a child has difficulty in one or more areas of learning. So even with all intelligence or motivation is not affected. So children with learning disorders may feel frustrated that they cannot master a subject despite trying hard and may act helpless or withdraw. So we have three learning disability. So the first one is dyslexia. So it is a common learning disabilities that can cause problems with reading, writing, and spelling. People with this dyslexia so may be highly intelligent or creative individuals but still struggle with basically their skills. So the second one is the dysgraphia. It is a neurological disorder of written integration that impairs writing ability and fine motor. So lastly, the dyscalculia. It's a learning disability in math. People with dyscalculia have trouble with math at many levels. They often struggle with key concepts like higher versus good. So that's all, Ma'am Camille.
Good day everyone and hello everybody. I am Teacher Jopay de Guzman and we will talk about the learners with physical disabilities. Physical disabilities may have an impact on some or all activities to a greater or lesser extent. Students with physical disabilities may have problems related to movement, posture, grasping or manipulating objects, communication, eating, perception, reflex movement, and or automatic motricity. The initial barrier experienced by many students with physical disabilities is physically accessing the learning environment itself. So, for many students with physical disabilities, the inaccessibility of buildings and surrounding areas is a problem. So, we have four major categories of disabilities: the visual impairment, hearing impairment, speech impairment, and multiple physical impairment. The first one is visual impairment. Visually impaired children may be defined as those children who suffered from the impaired conditions, difficulties, and deficiencies present in their visual organ, which make them different from children with normal vision to extent of requiring special education provision. So, visual impairment is a term experts use to describe any of vision loss. It is a disease, ability to see a degree that causes problems, not fixable by usual means such as glasses. Whether it is someone has partial vision loss, but some people are completely blind, but many others have what we call the legal blindness. These are the types of visual impairments. The first one is hyperopia or the farsightedness. It is where you can see objects far away but not near. It is a condition in which visual images come to a factor behind the retina of the eye and vision is better for distance that may near objects. So the cause of this is the size of the eyeball is too shorter. The second one is myopia or the nearsightedness. It is where you can see objects far near but not far away. It is the condition in which visual images come to a focus in front of retina of the eye, resulting especially in defect vision of distant object. The cause of it is the size of eyeball is too longer. The third one is astigmatism. So when we say astigmatism, it is a defect of optical system such as lens, causing rays from a point resulting blurred and imperfect images. So it is where you cannot focus at one object regularly. The fourth one is color blindness. It is a problem with cones cell of the eye. Decrease the ability to differentiate between colors. So genetic causes of it is when in natal, prenatal, and postnatal. We are familiar in color blindness. It is where you cannot differentiate any colors. The causes of visual impairment are the following: transfer of genes associated from the parents, carelessness adopted by pregnant mothers, mishaps and incidents, unfavorable condition, eye infection and eye diseases, evil effects of the fatal disease, improper postures adopted at workplaces, reading, writing, and working in defective and improper lights. The second one is hearing impairment. Hearing loss, or also called hearing impairment, makes it hard to hear or understand sounds. This happens when there is a problem with one or more part of the ears, the nerves coming from the ears or the hearing part of the brain. Some people are born with hearing loss, but hearing loss may come slowly over time or show up later in life. It can be caused by birth defects, infections, or medicine that can damage our ears. There are three types of hearing impairment. The first one is conductive loss. It refers to decrease in sound caused by a problem in the outer or middle ear, perhaps due to fluid, tumors, earwax, or even ear formation. This obstruction prevents sound from getting to the inner ear. Conductive hearing loss can often be treated surgically or with medicine. The second one is sensory neural loss. Refers to a problem located in the inner ear along the nerve pathway between the inner ear and the brain, perhaps due to age, noise damage, or something else. Sensory neural hearing loss impacts the pathways from your inner ear to your brain. Most times, sensory neural hearing loss cannot be corrected medically or surgically, but can be treated and helped with the use of hearing aids. The third one is mixed loss. It is a combination of conductive loss and sensory neural loss occurring at the same time. We have age of hearing impairment, the prelingual and the postlingual. The first one is prelingual. Is the loss of hearing, speech, and language develop. Example is a deaf child is one who is either childhood before acquiring knowledge. Most prelingual impairment do an acquired condition, usually either disease or trauma. The second one is the postlingual, the loss of hearing after spontaneous speech and language develop. It is a deafness of speech and language. Next is the speech impairment. The speech impairment is an abnormal speech that is unintelligible, is unpleasant, or interferes with communication. It affects people who have problems speaking in a regular tone of voice or tempo. Speech impairments make it hard for people to communicate properly, and they can happen in both children and adults. These disorders can cause frustration and embarrassment to the person suffering from them. So here are the forms of speech impairment. Articulation is the abnormal production of speech sounds. Voice, abnormal spoken language production characterized by unusual pitch, loudness, or quality sounds. The third one is fluency, hesitation or repetitions of sounds or words that interrupt a person's flow of speech. The types of speech impairments are childhood apraxia of speech. This can happen to children when it's time for them to start talking. The brain signals don't communicate with the mouth, so the child can move their lips and tongue in the way they are meant to. Dysarthria. This type of speech impairment happens when the muscles you use to talk are too weak and can't form words properly. Orofacial myofunctional disorders or OMD. OMDs are characterized by an abnormal pattern of facial muscle use. OMD interferes with how the facial muscles, including the tongue, are used. People who suffer from OMD might also struggle to breathe through their nose. Speech sound disorders. Speech sound disorders. It's normal for children to struggle to pronounce certain sounds as they learn to talk. But after ages 4 or 5, constant mispronunciation might signal a problem. It can continue into adulthood, or some people get it after a stroke. Stuttering. Stuttering can mean repeating words or sounds. It can be intensified by strong emotions or stress. The last category is multiple physical impairments. Students with multiple physical impairments have more than one disability in intellectual, physical, and/or functional abilities, which may affect mobility, behavior, emotion, or sensory abilities. Some characteristic challenges of individuals with severe multiple impairments are limited communication or speech impairment, problems with physical mobility, and cognitive impairments. Along with multiple disabilities, they can also exhibit sensory losses and behavior and/or social problems. And that is the end of my topic. I hope you learned something.
Makibalita naman tayo sa report ni Ms. Cristina Morales para sa learners who are gifted and talented. Sana all!
Hi, my name is Cristina M. Morales. I'm here to discuss the learners who are gifted and talented. First is the definition. Learners who are gifted and talented are students with higher abilities, developmentally advance their talents, abilities, and potentials ahead of time by making or finishing their tasks. Exciting and energizing activities should be provided to continuously keep them motivated. Kapag ang isang estudyante is mataas yung ability, sila yung masasabing gifted and talented. And sila din yung mas advanced pagdating sa talent, abilities, and then especially their potential. And sa pagsasabit ng tasks and activities, ganon. Mas nauna sila dahil alam na nila yung isasagot nila, alam na rin nila yung mga gagawin nila, and para ma-hook yung attention nila, kailangan nilang mag-provide ng activities na exciting and energizing. And there are differences between gifted and talented. When you say giftedness, it refers to students with extraordinary abilities in various academic area. Dito naman yung mga estudyante na merong extraordinary abilities. To say talent naman, it focuses on student with extraordinary abilities in specific area. Diba, lahat naman tayo is may kanya-kanyang talent. Marunong tayong sumayaw, marunong din tayong mag-drawing. Diba, may kanya-kanyang specific na talent. So, napaka-gifted mo na and very talented if lahat na lang is kaya mong gawin. Here's the multiple intelligence. There are different talent like musical, ito yung mga taong skillful and individual performing. Ito yung mga taong magaling mag-compose ng mga kanta, marunong din siyang magbasa ng mga rhythm. So, dyan pumapasok yung musical. When we say bodily kinesthetic naman, ito naman yung taong magaling sa movement, like yung pagsasayaw. And when we say interpersonal, it is about caring other people. Ito yung collaborating work together with others and comforting people. Ito yung mga taong mahilig mag-comfort. And mahilig din sila na tumulong sa mga tao. Sila yung kapag masasabihan mo ng problema is bibigyan ka nila agad ng advice. And when we say verbal, linguistic naman, ito naman yung mga taong enjoy na enjoy sa pagbabasa ng libro. They also explain things well. Yung kapag magkukwento ka, ay merong sense of humor. And when we say logical, mathematical, it is ability to think logically. Ito yung mga taong magaling sumagot ng mga logic, and ito yung mga taong magaling sa math. When we say nature smart naman, it is relate well to one's natural surrounding. Highly developed nature smart tend to understand the natural world of plants and animals. They also enjoy exploring and working outdoors. Ito naman yung mga taong mahilig sa halaman, sa aso, pusa. Diyan pumapasok yung naturalistic. And when we say intrapersonal, it is the capacity to explore one's inner world and feelings. Ito yung mga independent learners. Ito yung mga taong kaya nilang mag-isa. We say visual spatial, it refers to a person's ability to perceive, analyze, and understand visual information. Essentially, they can picture concepts over their mind, eyes. Ito yung mga tao na mas nakaka-recognize sila through visually from the word itself nga, diba? Mas marunong silang tumingin ng mga patterns, mas madali silang nakakakuha ng idea kapag nakakakita sila ng mga visual. Identification. Locate the student's domain of giftedness, describe the student's level of giftedness, and describe the student's field of talent. And learning characteristics. Not all learners are with the same distance below common manifestation of gifted and talented learner. One might possess a combination of characteristics in varying decreased amount. First, high level of intellectual curiosity. Ito yung mga estudyante na napakadaming tanong, napakadami nilang gustong malaman. Second, reads actively. Ito yung mga estudyante na mahilig pagdating sa pagbabasa. Third, high degree of task commitment. Ito naman yung mga estudyanteng super creative and effort pagdating sa mga activities and tasks. Next is keen power of observation. Ito naman yung mga estudyanteng napakasigasig pagdating sa observation. Next is gets bored easily. Ito yung mga taong madaling maboard. Next is excited about learning new concepts. Gustong-gusto nila yung mga may bagong kaalaman. And next is independence in learning. Ito yung sinasabi ko kanina na intrapersonal, independence in learning. Kaya nga, kaya nilang mag-isa from the word itself na independence. And next is good comprehension of complex context. Ito yung mga magagaling pagdating sa pag-analysis. Magaling silang mag-analyze ng context. Next is strong, well-developed imagination. Next, looks for new ways to do things. Ito naman yung mga estudyanteng gumagawa ng paraan para makagawa o madagdagan yung kanilang kaalaman. And next is often gives uncommon responses to common question. Hindi sila bastang sumasagot lang, laging may laman yung sagot nila, laging magaganda yung sagot nila kasi nga super academically and talented. That's all for today. Thanks for listening.
Akin naman pong ibabahagi ang aking kaalaman tungkol sa learners with socio-emotional disorder. So we will just focus on the socio-emotional disorder or disabilities. So we will just focus on the learners with socio-emotional disability or the 5 common socio-emotional disorders such as emotional behavioral disorder, anxiety attack, depression, obsessive-compulsive disorder, and bipolar disorder.
Okay, so learners with this kind of disability are more likely lives in a single-parent home, those who are belong to a broken family, sa mga foster homes, yung mga inampun lang, and the non-traditional living situations kung saan nakikitira lamang sila sa hindi nila kapamilya o malayong kapamilya. So those learners that possess this kind of disability, hindi sila yung nabibigyan ng proper attention ng kanilang mga guardian or ng kanilang parents. So let's jump in the emotional behavioral disorder. So we have 2 categories here, the internalizers and the externalizers. The internalizers, those are the learners na hindi masyadong nagsasalita, hindi mo makausap, and sometimes mababa yung tingin nila sa sarili nila at hindi sila nag-share ng kanilang mga problems sa ibang tao. While the externalizers, it takes place outside or you can see it physically. Those are the learners na madalas mag-tantrums, yung mga nagwawala at hindi makontrol.
According to the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act or IDEA, children with EPD exhibit one or more of these characteristics. First, an inability to learn which cannot be explained by intellectual, sensory, and health factors. So their disorder is beyond their cognitive capacity to learn. Second, an inability to build or maintain satisfactory interpersonal relationships with peers and teachers. So sila yung hindi nakikipag-socialize sa ibang tao and it feels like they are creating a barrier between their own world and other people. Third is inappropriate types of behavior or feelings under normal circumstances. For example, you were having an event and everyone is outside and one of your classmates is just isolating himself inside your room and doing his own thing, so he don't mind people around him. Fourth, a general pervasive mood of unhappiness or depression. So they have low self-esteem and this characteristic can lead to low performance level of the learner. And the last one is a tendency to develop physical symptoms of fears associated with personal or school problems. So sila yung mga students na parating balisa, tulala at parang may mabigat laging problema. They have too much on their bags which the reason may be personal.
Come to think of it, few of these characteristics is portrayed by a learner without EBD. However, those who are diagnosed with EBD, their behavior continues for a long time, which makes a signal that they are not coping up with the environment that they are living in. Next is anxiety attack or anxiety disorder. So learners with this kind of disability, sometimes you feel excessive, you feel unrealistic worry and tension with little or no valid reason.
In 2019, 25% of teens or 1 out of 4 teenagers ages 13 to 18 years old have an anxiety disorder.
Maraming nakararanas ng anxiety lalo na ngayong panahon because of COVID-19 pandemic. And I know some of us suffer from this anxiety attack or panic attack, lalo na kapag kinakabahan tayo. Sometimes we are shaking, we are sweating, and hirap tayong huminga because of nervousness. Next is depression. This is very common lalo na sa mga kabataan ngayon, which sometimes leads to suicidal acts if not treated properly. Next is obsessive-compulsive disorder. So OCD is characterized by unwanted thoughts or obsessions such as repetitive actions or compulsions which makes them driven to do something over and over again. Examples of OCD, checking a thing or cleaning from time to time. And I will example myself na nakararanas ng OCD because I sometimes check my alarm clock 3 times, paulit-ulit talaga, kasi I don't want na hindi siya tumunog. And the last one is bipolar disorder or manic depressive disorder. So this is a very serious medical illness that causes dramatic mood swings from high level of feelings to low.
Bipolar disorder was historically recognized as occurring only in adulthood but can now be diagnosed in children.
Samantala, ihahayag ko naman sa inyo kung ano ang learners with chronic illnesses. Ano nga ba ang chronic illnesses? Well, a chronic illnesses is the personal experience of living with affliction that often accompanies by chronic diseases. A chronic illnesses is a condition where it lasts for 3 months or longer. At sa pagtagal ng panahon ay kasabay rin ito ay ang paglala ng sakit na maaaring magdulot ng kamatayan ng isang tao. Ang madalas na tamaan ng sakit na ito ay ang mga matatanda. Ito yung mga sakit na can be controlled but cannot be cured. Like example, the cancer, arthritis, diabetes, stroke, at marami pang iba. Base sa mga nabanggit kong sakit, alam ko ng iba dito ay familiar na sa inyo. Sapagkat ang iba dito ay nararanasan natin sa ating mga kanya-kanyang tahanan or even sa kapitbahay at ang iba naman ay napapanood natin sa mga palabas. At alam nyo ba na ang depression ay isa ring chronic condition? Yes, opo, isa po itong disease kung saan kailangan ng matagalang treatment para maging okay ka. Kailangan mong bumisita ng doktor or pumunta ng clinic para ma-treatment or mabigay sa'yo yung treatment na kailangan mo. I know some of you might ask, why depression? Bakit naging part ng chronic illnesses ang depression? Well, as we all know that depression is not a joke. Ito yung sakit na kailangan ng matagalang treatment or buwan bago ka gumaling sa sakit na ito. Dahil lalo na yung mga nakaraang taon, 2021, ang daming namatay dahil sa depression. Kasi nga, hindi ito yung sakit na katulad ng ubo na pag inubo mo, wala na. Pag sipon na kapag sininga mo, wala na, magaling ka na, makakahinga ka na. Ito yung sakit na magkukos talaga na unti-unti kang papat. Asthma is also a chronic disease because it affects the airways of the lungs. It causes repeated episodes of wheezing, breathlessness, chest tightness, and nighttime or early morning coughing. During an asthma attack, airways become inflamed, making it hard to breathe. Another is diabetes. Diabetes is a chronic disease that occurs either when the pancreas does not produce enough insulin or the body cannot effectively use the insulin it produces. Take note that insulin is a blood sugar that regulates the hormone. Next is epilepsy. It is a chronic non-communicable disease of the brain that affects people of all ages. Ang mga taong may epilepsy ay mga taong bigla-bigla na lang nanginginig out of nowhere. And for allergies, it is one of the most common chronic diseases. It occurs when the body's immune system sees a substance as harmful and overreacts. Para mas maintindihan natin kung ano nga ba ang learners with difficult circumstances, makichika tayo kay Ms. Wendy Ramos para sa live report.
Good day everyone, I'm Wendy Ramos and I will discuss to you about the learners in difficult circumstances. When we say circumstances, it is a fact or event that affects a situation in our surrounding or a condition that causes something to occur. The children or the learners in difficult circumstances are more vulnerable in terms of the risk to the right of survival, protection, and participation. They are not unfortunate enough to receive an environment which is conducive to provide appropriate development opportunity. Under the learners in difficult circumstances, they have the living in remote places, victims of war, products of broken family, street children, or children from impoverished family, and the last one is victims of abuse. The first one is living in remote places. Is the rural areas that far away from cities and places where most people live and they difficult to get to. So, ang ibig sabihin nito ay malayo sila sa sibilisasyon and they have challenges to do. Example to this is the first one, lack of transportation. The second one is lack of access to quality healthcare, and the third one is lack of water, and the fourth one is lack of employment opportunities, and the last one is lack of internet access. They are many factors to this, lalo na yung mga bata na hindi makapag-aral dahil sa madaming rason. So, the next one is victims of war. So, a person that suffers from the destructive action undertaken as a result of an armed conflict between two or more parties, particularly death, injury, hardship, loss of property, or dislocation. Dahil sa mga naapektuhan ng war, ay madaming nawalan ng pamilya at ang daming na trauma.
So, the third one is product of broken family, meaning a family is one that includes unhealthy or several relationship within the family unit. Ang dahilan din ng isang family broken ay yung divorce na legal sa ibang bansa. Pero sa Pilipinas ay hindi pa yun isinabatas dahil sisirain ng diborsyo ang pagiging sagrado ng kasal. Hindi rin umano na nakakabuti sa mga bata ang isang broken family. Marami rin ang natatakot na maabuso ang diborsyo sakaling maging batas ito. Baka raw magaya sa Estados Unidos na ginagawang unlimited. The next one is street children or children from impoverished family. In other words, street children are children who depend on the street. So this is the minors who live and survive on the streets. They often grow up in public landfills, train stations, or under the bridges of the world's major cities. Because of conflicts with their family, these children don't want to or can't return home. Dahil sa palaki ng populasyon sa Pilipinas ay madaming nagugutom, lalong-lalo na yung mga pulubi na pinababayaan ng kanilang pamilya dahil din sa kakulangan ng pera. So, the last one is the victims of abuse. It is defined as in any action that intentionally harms or injures another person. In short, someone who purposefully harms another in any way is committing abuse. Dito naman, maraming naaabuso, mapalalaki man o babae, matanda man o bata. Dahil din dito, maraming natutrauma at dinadaan nila sa suicide kaysa ipasabi nila sa iba. Kasi minsan ay nagbabanta sa kanila para hindi nila ito sabihin.
Para sa huling detalye ng ating balita tungkol sa learners from indigenous groups, ichika mo Miss Diana Rose de los Reyes.
Thank you, Ma'am Sheila. Good morning to everyone. The learners from indigenous groups. When we say indigenous, describe any group of people native to a specific nations. In other words, it refers to people who lived there before colonies or settlers arrived, defined new borders and began to occupy the land. The Philippines is a culturally diverse country with an estimated 14 to 17 million indigenous peoples or IPs belonging to 110 ethno-linguistic groups. Examples of the indigenous groups are the Kaningoon and Ibaloy of Luzon, the Tagbanwa and Cagayanan of Visayas, and the Bukidnon and Mandaya of Mindanao. And for further educations, the Alternative Learning System or ALS, Curriculum for Indigenous Peoples or IPs. The Department of Education or DepEd has initiated the development of education curriculum that was designed to meet the learning needs of the indigenous peoples or IPs communities. Through DepEd's Bureau of Alternative Learning System or BALS, the Alternative Learning System or ALS curriculum for IPs was developed in response to the Education for All or AFA campaign to provide the basic learning needs of all marginalized learners. The learning competencies of the IP curriculum were drawn from the existing ALS curriculum for the basic literacy, elementary and secondary levels. The educational goal of the IP curriculum is the attainment of functional literacy for the IPs. The IP curriculum is to be implemented and train ALS implementers with IP learners. Teaching strategies. Tribal teachers begin teaching by building on the common place. Create a learning environment that flows with the natural current of humanism. Basic understanding begins with exploring how things can happen. Focus on teaching the perennial phenomena such as solar and lunar cycles. Focuses as much on learning with the heart as on learning with the mind. Facilitates learning how to see on or how one really is rather than an image manufactured through one's or another concepts. That's all. Thank you.
Always remember this. Every student can learn, just not on the same day or in the same way. At ayun po ang mga kaalaman na hatid sa inyo ng TV.
Maraming salamat at magandang umaga mga kabaluyan.